Hello, and welcome to another Logic tutorial with me, Ed the Shed. My name is Ed, but I'm not the Shed. In this video I will be talking about the Evoc 20 filter bank. So let's just get straight into it. This plugin works by routing the input signal through two parallel, formant filter banks. This signal can then be edited separately in each bank before it joins back up together again in the master section. Now before I go any further, let's ask ourselves, what the bloody hell is formant, or formants? I'll have a George formant any day. Oh, shut up, Ed. Formants, in simple form, are the peaks in a frequency spectrum. When humans are listening to dissimilar sounds, our ears are most sensitive to the peaks in the signal. Try saying all of the vowels out loud right now. A, E, I, O, U. If you listen, you will notice that they all have a very different tone. If you record yourself speaking each of these vowels into Logic and have a look on the spectrum, you will notice that each of the vowels has different signal peaks. These peaks are what defines the main body of the sound to our ears, and these peaks can also be called formants. Hooray! So what are formants? They are simply the main peaks that show in the frequency spectrum. Lovely. So, let's do what we always do, and break this sucker down into sections, so we can understand it a bit better. So, we have our filter parameter section here, which is where you would probably want to start off. Then we have our modulation controls below, and finally our master section. Let's go back to our first section now and try and understand this a bit better. So let's start by talking about this big blue bastard, big blue bar at the top here. Think of this bar as our master filter. This determines the lowest and highest frequencies that are allowed to pass through the filters. So with this slider I can either choose to make it a low-pass filter, or alternatively, I could choose to cut out the low end and make it a high-pass filter. And just to be really clever, I can even choose to make it a band-pass filter. So, any frequencies that are not within the blue area will be cut. The next parameter is in the middle. This is the two filter banks. Each filter bank has lots of tiny little faders lined up in them. These faders allow you to change the level of each frequency band separately. You can also click on an empty space and then draw a lovely looking curve. In my opinion, the most important knob on this plugin is the formant shift. This dial has the most drastic effect on the signal. It works by shifting all of the selected bands up or down the frequency spectrum. Below this is the resonance knob. This emphasizes the center frequency of each band. If you bring this knob up higher, it makes the signal have a sharper, brighter sound. This is not always a good thing, however, so use this carefully. Before I go any further, I will just have a quick play with the formant shift dial, followed by a sneaky fiddle with the resonance knob, so then you can hear the effects on our sound. So I will start by bypassing the plugin, and then I'll turn it on afterwards. Here we go. Before I move on, let's just take a quick look at these two sneaky little felons, over here. The bands option lets you choose how many frequency bands you want your filter banks to have in them, and the one next to it lets you choose what filter curve you want the lowest band to have. When you add, or take away, bands, it can add quite a change to the sound. Let me show you now, by starting with 5 bands and then adding more bands after. Okay, here we go. So hopefully you could hear the effects that different numbers of bands have on the sound. It might be a clever idea to automate this parameter. Give it a go on your own audio samples. Now, after we have messed about with these parameters and we are happy, the next logical thing to look at is the modulation section. If we split this into 2 halves, we notice that we have 2 separate LFOs, one for fade, and one for shift. So let's take a look at the shift LFO. The intensity controls how much form and shift modulation you want to apply. I usually start with it all the way up, and then slowly bring it down until I am happy. The knob next to this lets you choose the rate of the LFO. You can either have it synced to your project tempo, or free. Finally, you can choose different types of waveform for the LFO to use by selecting them here. So, a good way to make a bit of a riser would be to select the rising sawtooth wave, and set the rate to something like 4 bars. This sort of technique is used a lot in progressive house. So, now that our signal has been modulated and processed through our filter section, we come to this little area before the master output. Now, this is still part of the main filter section, however you should usually mess around with the parameters on this side after you have dealt with everything on that side. Once you have done this, you can apply makeup gain or reduction to either of the 2 filter banks. Then you can mix the signal that is shared between them with this slider here. The slope button lets you choose how sharp you want your filtering slopes to be. Option 1 is a 6 dB slope and option 2 is a 12 dB slope. So if I open up my EQ here, I will show you visually the 2 options. First let's do 6 dB. Now let's do 12 dB. Option 1 has a smoother feel to it, whereas option 2 has a bit of a tighter feel. Okay, let's look at the master section now. I'll start from the top. So, the overdrive does exactly what it says on the tin. You can simply turn it on or off, so use it to your taste. The last few things are the master fader and the stereo width dial. There is plenty more to talk about with this plugin, but for now I shall leave it here. I hope that this tutorial explained a bit about how this plugin works. Set yourself a task and try using this plugin with at least 4 different samples. Maybe you could use a drum loop or a vocal or sound effect. See what results you can come up with if you add delay effects after the Evoc in the inserts chain. or look out for some exercises on my website to help you practice even more. Thanks for watching, see you next time.